welcome back to a new YouTube video. So I haven't posted a video in a while, and there's a reason for that. I've been deep in kind of restructuring who I help, and so the content needed to reflect that. But before I go any further and chat all about that, for those of you that are new, my name is Dr. Simone. I'm a medical doctor and a health and wellness coach, and now I focus on helping women physicians pivot out of public health care into their own wellness or private practice or out of hospital employment, even if they're unsure where to start or they don't want to risk losing their income. Focus has always been wellness and work and how work affects your wellness and all of these things. But now I'm really, narrowing it down to people like me, women doctors who, like me, journeyed from, who want to move from public healthcare into work that feels more aligned without the draining experience that can come from working in public healthcare. So if you're a medical doctor and you work in either a hospital or health center and you want to be able to transition into out of hospital employment or start your own private clinic or wellness practice, this is the space for you. So today I wanted to talk about my own career journey. One, so that, if any parts of it that you can relate to, is just so that you can feel seen, understood, and then also coming from my experience, all of the valuable lessons that I would have learned that you can use in your own journey, even if it doesn't look similar or it doesn't look similar to what mine looked like. Taking the lessons from my own journey will help you as you begin to think about your own pivot or your own transition out of the public healthcare system. So to keep this video as focused as possible, I'll start from when I started work, which was internship year. And so I did 5 years of medical school. I went to University of the West Indies, Mona campus to do my degree. And I really enjoyed that experience. It was difficult as medical school is, but being in that environment, it was new. It's not too different from my own country and the culture and all of that. So it wasn't the biggest adjustment, but I really enjoyed the experience. I had, amazing fun experiences. I met a lot of great and amazing people. And even though it was difficult, I don't regret it because it was generally a great experience doing medical school in another country. And then after I finished medical school, well, I came back to Trinidad and, we do internship, um, you know, in a hospital setting, and you can decide whatever hospital you want to do that internship in. And so that year was pretty difficult for me, to say the least. I was able to get a taste of the public healthcare system, what it entails. And I was really, I had some questions in my mind as to whether this would be something working in a hospital or, working in the traditional clinical path would be something I would do long term. But I wanted to experience it before I just said no, right off the bat. And so I wanted to experience, working as a doctor, working in the different departments, and so that I can really make a good assessment as to whether this is for me or not. But unfortunately, the experience wasn't, what I wanted it to be. And so at the end, I was sure that I would not return to the hospital environment. After leaving, I actually wasn't sure what I wanted to do and how I could use, the degree that I had to be able to find work that, that I enjoyed, that would bring an income that was aligned. And so I spent quite a few years kind of in that in between period, in that in between space where I wasn't sure. So of course I worked in different private healthcare settings, and that gave me the experience I needed as well post internship. And so I'm grateful for all of those experiences as well. And then there's a difference between working in a public healthcare setting and private setting. And so I was able to kind of get both of those experiences because they can be totally different It's a lot slower. You kind of get a different group of symptoms, and people coming in for different kinds of reasons. And so two different experiences, and so I gained a lot of experience, one from internship and two from working in different private healthcare settings as well. And even though the private healthcare setting was better for me overall in terms of how much I enjoyed it, there was something always there that, okay, it's not bad, but it's still not somewhere where I see myself working long term. And so there was always that question in my mind as to whether this is where I was supposed to be, or whether this was, something that I should pursue long term. So I think the last full time private job I had was really a turning point for me, because soon after I got that job, I was back to that feeling of, yeah, this is not where I'm feeling settled. This is not where I want to be long term. And so I really made the decision that I would stop being frustrated and complaining about where I was, and that I wasn't where I wanted to be, and can finally get the support to be able to find where I could work, where I could use the experience and the background that I have to find work that really fits with how I see myself living, how I want my lifestyle to be. And while working in that private healthcare setting, the last full-time job I had, apart from my own personal career ambitions and that kind of thing, there was also allowed me to see a gap that was missing. So I would see patients all the time. In our Caribbean setting, there is the prevalence of lifestyle diseases, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol. All of those things are really high. And so I found myself counseling people day after day, week after week about, the lifestyle changes and the management needed to, you know, manage those kinds of conditions. And I felt like even though I would have gotten that foundational skill from medical school, I felt there was more that was needed. I wasn't able to take people sufficiently, at least to my standard, from A to Z. We often tell people, okay, exercise, or, eat better, or eat this, that, or the other, but there isn't that guidance to take them from A to B, then B to C, then C to D. And so many things go into whether people are consistent with these things. And so I felt like, okay, this is something that I see that can be useful, and that can really help me be able to help, my patients and people a lot better. And so I began researching what I can do, or what I can study, or what skill I can get to be able to help these people in that way. And I could go on Google and research and find all sorts of things. And I think things are kind of, it's not very clear now, but I think I remember researching, helping people with lifestyle. I'm not sure what I put in or whatever, but I was able to come up on coaching, or wellness coaching, or health coaching. And that was something I saw it and I researched it, and I kind of put it at the back of my mind. And then when I really wanted the support to be able to kind of go to the next level, and not kind of stay in that stage where I'm just kind of wanting and not going for what I want. I tell the story a few times on my socials. I went to therapy, and so from therapy, the counselor, she was able to refer me to a career coach, and that's where everything started. So the lighting changed a lot. So I was referred to a career coach, and one of the things, he had a sort of a very standard kind of test-like approach to his coaching, and so we used sort of uh, you know, it was like an assessment over a few weeks to be able to find what was good for me. So I think we went over, how I view my life, my lifestyle, how I want to work, my interests, all of those things. We looked at to be able to reach to the final assessment. And really and truly, before I even went to him, I was already researching the health and wellness coaching. And so at the back of my mind, I already knew what I wanted to do, right? And so sometimes I'll talk about that in the end when I talk about the lessons. Sometimes we need other things to kind of confirm what we already know. And so if you're at the point where, there's something at the back of your mind, but there are some thoughts like, can I really do this? Is it possible? Those things may hold you back. Um, but it's all about kind of opening your options and your mind to what you can do. And I think that experience kind of gave me that push to go forward and move forward with it. So during that um, time I spent with the career coach, one of the action steps at the end when we were wrapping things up was he set a deadline for me to get my certification in health and life coaching, because we already made the assessment that I would go ahead with the coaching, see what needs to be done so that I can get, the skills and whatever I needed to move forward. And so with that strict push and support, I signed up for my certification in health and life coaching in January of 2021, and I did the certification. It was 6 months. If you did it full time, it lasted 6 months, and I started in January, and I completed everything, all of my practice clients and all of that in August of 2021. And of course, if you're doing it part time, it can take longer than that. But I finished everything in 2021, and I think I got my official certificate in that time as well. And actually, before that, for the certification, we would have to have practice clients. Those are some of the requirements to be able to pass the certificate. And so I started seeing coaching clients even before I finished my certification. And I actually started seeing, having clients that actually paid me, not for a lot, but actually paying me before, I finished everything as well, because I started to get the confidence to be able to coach people. And so by the end of my certification, I was already seeing, clients. So at August 2021, I continued working at my full-time job. I continued seeing clients as well while I was also working full-time. And by January 2022, I put in my notice and I left that job full-time. Officially from January 2022, I've been working as a coach, a health and wellness coach full time. And I've also, because I find it important as well, that's why I wanted to, ensure that I completed internship, to always have that option as well. I think in life, freedom comes from having options. And so, having that experience from internship, having that experience in private healthcare, and having that full-time job where I was working pretty much independently, gave me the experience I needed to also offer clinical services after I left my full-time job. So I have worked in a clinic part-time before, offering services, and I also do at-home, medical visits as well. I have found a way to incorporate or to do my wellness coaching, which is something that I am really passionate about and excited about growing and building, while also, practicing and doing my clinical, work as well, which also gives me options, and also improves my income at the same time. And then it's also something that, having more options means more income, obviously. And then there are a number of ways in which you can work and, offer your services to the world. So that's my story in a nutshell, from internship to now working as a health and wellness coach and a doctor part time as well. And there are a few lessons that I learned along the way, that I think if you're in that phase of thinking about, transitioning from public health care into your own practice, or if you just want to be able to go into out of hospital employment, even if you're working for a private clinic, I think these will be helpful. The first lesson is to consider what you actually like and dislike. I think it can be sort of a thing, especially with doctors. I feel, I don't know if this is true for any other profession, where um, you can feel guilty for saying that you don't like to do something related to medicine, because I feel like, people put doctors and medicine on a certain pedestal. I don't know what other word to use. That's the word that comes to mind. And so we sort of not allowed to complain about certain things, I feel, in my experience. And so it can feel you can feel guilty if you decide that, okay, well, this form of working is not what I want to do or what I don't like doing. And so one of the things I had to let go of was feeling guilty for not liking the hospital environment and not liking that way of working. It was honestly one of the most draining years for me. And I really couldn't picture myself going back to that environment and working in that way. I didn't like being on call. I didn't like, working from morning to evening and then working again for another shift after. I really feel like humans shouldn't be working like that. And so it was just not in alignment with the way I saw myself living. And what really changed my perspective was the thought that, okay, I'm a doctor and I take care of people. It doesn't mean that I have to take care of people and make an impact in this kind of way. And so, after that, I kind of let go of that guilt of feeling like, if I am not in a hospital, then I'm, not doing the right work as a doctor. Another lesson is like, and this comes from the first point as well, is considering how you like to work. So, for example, I knew that I didn't like being on call. I don't like working in the night. Um, you know, I prefer to work in the day and rest in the night. I like to have freedom to go on vacations, to spend time with my family. And during that year, I realized where a lot of time where I had to kind of, almost fight to be able to do things that I enjoyed and to ask permission to do things that I enjoyed. And I realized that that wasn't how I wanted to work and, how I saw myself working in the future. And so I really considered that, especially in the last phase where I was considering coaching and how I wanted to work. This really is in alignment, with how I want to live my life. One, I have control over my schedule, and I decide, when I go on vacation, and, I have the freedom to spend time with my family and friends as much as I want to. And so it may not be the same requirements for you. Yours may be different, but really consider, how you like to work, what things are really important to you, because it will guide you in terms of what decision you make for your career. Another thing that really changed the game for me was the thought that a degree actually gives you options, right? That's why I think they always tell us, go to school, get an education and that kind of thing. And I think one of the reasons why we are encouraged to do that is because, at least how I think about it now, is that it gives you options in life, right? And sometimes we can see a degree as being very limited, and depending on the degree, it can be limiting depending on how specific it is. But in terms of medicine and a medical degree, I don't see it anymore as something that is limiting. I actually think because we went through 5 years of learning so much from year one to year five, we've learned theory, all sorts of different systems in the body, anatomy. We've learned how to interact with people, clinical skills, all of the things that if you were to make a list, the list will go on and on of all of the things that we have learned. And so I think, with the experience, the education, the skills that we learned, you can literally make a list of all of the things that, we would have gone through that 5 years, and pick out things that you enjoy, that you don't mind talking about, that you don't mind focusing on, and actually see, what career path is possible with it. So I don't see the medical degree as something that limits you. I actually think it gives you so many options, because we've learned so much over that 5 years that, there must be some part of it that you enjoy. And that was one thing that I leaned into during my, the time I spent in my last full-time job. I really enjoyed talking to people and kind of helping them go from A to B. And so that those things were in my thoughts when I decided, okay, is coaching a good idea for me? This may be good because I like the chatting and kind of figuring things out, and seeing you go from, a place where things aren't where you want it to be to a place where they are, and it becomes an easy process. And so it's just about figuring out, okay, what do I know, what have I learned, what experience I have, and what things you actually enjoy and you don't mind talking about every day. The last thing I want to touch on in this video in terms of the lessons that I learned was, your impact can be made anywhere and in any setting. So I think we can be limited in terms of, okay, well, if I'm a doctor, then I can, only change lives or have an impact in the hospital, or maybe a health center, or maybe even in a private clinic. Um, and I think that is not true at all. We've seen now with the rise of social media how important and how impactful people who have medical knowledge can be in terms of, disseminating information. There's so many sources of information out there that are misleading, and so it's important that doctors are out there, educating people in all sorts of different ways. And so, really thinking out of the box and being creative in the ways that you can make an impact, it can be really helpful. The doctors and people with medical degrees needed in the workplaces. We needed, on social media, in so many other places other than in the hospitals. Of course, we need our hospital doctors, and there will always be people who want to work in that environment and in that setting. But if you don't want to be in that setting, or you don't want to be in it full time, there's so many other areas where people, need your expertise, your knowledge, your experience. And I've seen it in so many ways in the last few years, where people really appreciate a doctor being able to come and to give them information firsthand, and to be able to talk to them, right? So, yeah, impact can be made in any place, in any setting. It doesn't need to be in a hospital. If you want to be there, of course, stay there. But if you don't want to, there's so many places where you need it. So that was my video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're a doctor and you're thinking about, transitioning out of public health care, it made you think of, your career and how you can move forward in a different way. Of course, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you have any, recommendations for videos I can do in the future, please leave them in the comments as well, and they can shape the way that, I do videos and what videos I do moving forward. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.